And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Bumper music must have not played there. I am going to dive into a little bit of the chaos kind of going on. There's basically what we've been expecting, maybe not to the full extent yet, but I think we're seeing a kind of global shift of world powers. And, I got probably 6 articles, but I'm only going to probably go over 2 of them. One of them, let me get back to it, is titled Russia Launches Airstrikes in Northern Syria, Senior Military Official Says. And I have another one here. Russia begins airstrikes against ISIS in Syria, from antiwar.com. And another one from antiwar.com, I think I'll go ahead and cover that one too, is a report, Pentagon suspends Syrian rebel training program. So I want to get into that, but there's one that We Are Change put out, wearechange.org. You can also find them on YouTube, We Are Change. This one's Putin checkmates Obama on New World Order, World War III. And, this global shift when it comes to the world currency, to, when it comes to the petrodollar, the U.S. dollar, Federal Reserve note, and what Russia and China and those countries have been trying to do, which they kind of have Europe kind of going, if you go for it, we're with you, basically. We're not jumping ship quite yet, but if you prove that you're going to become the new world currency, then we're kind of with you, because we're getting screwed over here. And that's what we're also seeing here in America. And this whole thing with Syria is kind of playing into that. Taking the confidence away from America will also take the confidence away from the U.S. dollar. And I think this was definitely something played by Putin as a strategy towards that. Also, it kind of shows how maybe other countries don't quite look at us the same anymore, because we're involved in so much crap, and everywhere we go tends to become less stable than it was before we went there. And it also kind of shows that Obama doesn't really have any sway in the world power viewpoint. He doesn't have that charisma. Well, he doesn't have it here in America either. And it's not just him. It's our political system. And then when other countries are looking at you, well, it looks like it's probably going to be Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. And they're looking at their own history. They're looking at what worked and what didn't work. And they're going, yeah, these guys are just screwed. So I think that, there's a lot at play here, and it's really showing that we are not that world power that we once were, except we do have the military, but we have it spread out, so broad, and we're not really doing any good with it anymore. We're not helping free people. We're helping collapse, you know, societies in that area. This isn't just ridding the area of the bad guys. This is ridding the area of bad guys. This is ridding the area of the good guys, because they don't really distinguish, between, hey, that guy might have a gun to protect his family. They're going, this is a war scene, so they should know better type attitude. It's not that easy. Just imagine it here. You're going to be, you think that you have a society collapsed around you. Last thing you want to do is give up your gun. We have a lot of issues, and we've collapsed these things, and now we have this migrant problem, immigration problem, and it's also causing a collapse of the Western world, because it's not that people don't want others from other countries to come and make their home, there. It's the fact that you can only take so many people for the infrastructures you have. You can't just flood one city just full of immigrants and expect it to be okay. And I think a lot of these little oasis cities that they pit around America, they're figuring this out quite quickly. Okay, let me go ahead and get into this. We are changed. Putin checkmates Obama on New World Order.
As you could see by Vladimir Putin, Putin is looking over at Obama saying, I got you. I outsmarted you. Checkmate, mofo. And Barack, with disdain and frustration, has been caught in a catch-22 position. Now, the situation right now between Russia and the United States when it comes to Syria is extremely confusing. There's a lot of propaganda out there, a lot of disinformation, and a lot of history that it's not well known, that is not being brought up to the American public right now. But in this video, we're going to break down a lot of important information that's going to make total clear sense of what exactly is happening, not only behind this beautiful photo of these two world leaders, but what's really happening in this world geopolitically. Now, right now, the Russian parliament approved sending troops and warplanes over to Syria. China is sending military advisors and aid over to Syria to help fight ISIS alongside Russia. The bombardment campaign has started. Russian positions are aligned all along Assad's forces, fighting off the rebels and fighting off ISIS. There's dramatic footage coming out right now that's being blasted by the mainstream media showing the bombing campaign of the Russians assisted by the Chinese. You see drone footage also being released. Now, the situation is very complex. Right now, we have China, Russia, Iran, Iraq, Bashar al-Assad coming together against the forces of the United States, Israel, Turkey, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. As we know from the previous history, fighting ISIS has not been the U.S.'s goal. Ever since 2006, according to leaked WikiLeaks documents, the U.S. was planning to overthrow Assad. Now, Assad, who was allied with Russia, who was not allied with the United States, with the petrodollar, with U.S. hegemony, stood in the way of a pipeline that Saudi Arabia was planning to build that would undercut Russia and provide oil to Europe. Assad also stood against the U.S. petrodollar and made geopolitical moves against that. That's why he was seen as an enemy way before ISIS. Now, with Russia defending Syria, obviously there's a lot of key geopolitical strengths here, but they're catching Barack Obama in a catch-22. Not only do they have bases here, but they also have a strong alliance with Syria. Now, if you look what happened beforehand, we are going to war against the same group we funded, armed, we were fighting alongside last year while continuing to support them with our tax dollars. This is exactly what happened with ISIS. ISIS was supported, just like the rebels in Libya were supported to overthrow Gaddafi. The U.S. and NATO said that they wanted to spread democracy and freedom in Libya. They bombed that country like we are bombing Syria and did bomb Syria before, and we overthrew Gaddafi, and now the country is in turmoil. It is destroyed with just religious fighting from all different sects, and that country has been utterly polarized and destroyed with sectarian violence because of the U.S. involvement. There's no democracy. There's no more freedom. The U.S. did the same strategy by funding and supporting Syrian rebels. They called them the freedom fighters. Meanwhile, it turned out that they were ISIS. Iraqi troops, when they were fighting ISIS, when ISIS retreats, they are fighting Israeli and American weapons and technology alongside ISIS troops when they are fighting against the Iraqis. Turkey is opening up the border, allowing any fighter to come in. Putin is well known of this. He even said himself that the mercenaries are fighting because they pay a lot more money. He goes into great detail how Turkey, Saudi Arabia are buying up oil that ISIS took control of in Syria. They're buying it for cheap. Where are the U.S. sanctions when it comes to Turkey and Saudi Arabia financing ISIS by buying their oil? They put sanctions on Iran. They put sanctions on Russia. But they do not put sanctions on the very people giving ISIS almost millions and millions of dollars every single day financing their operations. U.S. had secret training facilities in Jordan that admittedly are training al-Nusra fighters that are going against Syria. Israel is bombing Assad forces as they're making headway against ISIS. The goal was never to defeat ISIS. The goal was always to overthrow Assad, who was standing in the way of U.S. hegemony and the U.S. petrodollar. You see John McCain here, who visited Syria, was standing behind these so-called freedom fighters. They all turned out to be ISIS. That's why the Pentagon right now is stopping the rebel training program that they have in Syria, because it's not working. All the arms and all the trainings are going towards radical Islamists, al-Nusra and ISIS. And that's why Russia is now stepping in saying, no, we're really going to bomb this. The U.S. was supposed to be bombing ISIS, as we've heard in the news, but they are even refusing combined training camps that are turning out thousands of fighters a month. Even NPR reported just after a year of supposedly bombing ISIS, the U.S. campaign shows limited gains because the U.S. does not want to defeat ISIS. The U.S. wants to defeat Assad because he's standing in their way. Now, the United States is saying that Russia is destabilizing Syria. Meanwhile, it was the United States funding and training rebels with Turkey, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, who have done so in the beginning. Right now, we're seeing a lot of propaganda by the New York Times, by the Independent, saying that Vladimir Putin is not just attacking ISIS. We're seeing that the U.S. is alarmed and scared. Of course, the United States is alarmed. And now the Western media is vilifying Putin as a villain. Now, if you look at the bombardment campaigns, they have been targeting anyone standing against Assad, obviously. That's because they have an alliance together. And now these two global powers, these two great alliances, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, which have been knowingly supporting ISIS rebels, even Jordan, are facing off against Syria, Iraq, Iran, Russia, which have joined also in the intelligence pact, sharing information on how to defeat ISIS, alongside China, that is aiding them in this battle. We see these global forces facing off against each other with this very important prized geopolitical territory known as Syria. Tensions are escalating. Many people are saying World War III would break out between all these major factions, and it very way may be that situation. But to stop it, we have to be informed about what is really happening and the true history of it. So if you found this informational helpful, send it out to all your friends, because the mainstream media is sending a lot of propaganda, not dealing with the whole picture. No side is right. Bombing and killing people is wrong, whether it's Assad, Russia, whether it's Israel or the United States. Bombing people is not right. These two forces are only creating more hatred and destruction. But to stop it, we need to understand it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe. We're going to have a lot more news coming, breaking down all the geopolitical news that you're not hearing on the mainstream media here on youtube.com.
We are change. We are change.org. We are change on YouTube. Now let's look at give me a second here. The report about the Syrian rebel training program being suspended. Antiwar.com. It's also on truthandmedia.com. And it says here, though an official announcement on the matter has not been made yet, reports are emerging that the Pentagon has suspended the train and equip program intended to create a new faction of pro-U.S. Syrian rebels, which has been dubbed the New Syrian Forces. 2 classes of NSF fighters ever reach Syria during the program's history. The first class of 54 fighters was overrun quickly, and 4 or 5 were confirmed to still be active this month. The second class, estimated at 70 to 75 fighters, entered Syria 10 days ago. If the first class was a failure, the second class was embarrassing. So, with the group almost immediately surrendering its weapons and vehicles to Al-Qaeda, CENTCOM today released further details about the chain of events leading to the surrender. The new details make CENTCOM's timeline look even worse on the matter. NSF forces entered Syria on 9/18, and CENTCOM spokesman Colonel Patrick Ryder claimed to have first gotten information on the armed surrender on Sunday, 9/20. The first media reports to that effect emerged Tuesday, 9/22, and on Wednesday, 9/23. Ryder himself widely denied the media reports, accusing Al-Qaeda of making the whole thing up, even though he'd known for days it was true. The Pentagon finally admitted what happened on 9/25. The U.S. has faced heavy criticism for its $500 million training program, both for wasting huge amounts of money, training almost no one, and for throwing large amounts of weaponry at the country, even though their track record shows those weapons overwhelmingly end up in the hands of Islamic factions. And you can read the rest of that at antiwar.com or Truth and Media. I have one here, Fox News. And this is kind of more directly on the Russian part of this whole situation, which you best believe that was too. They're not going to spend any money trying to train small groups anymore because they know Russia's in the mix. But Fox News, Russia launches airstrikes in northern Syria, senior military official says. Russian warplanes began bombarding Syrian opposition targets in the war-torn nation's north Wednesday. Following a tense meeting at which a Russian general asked Pentagon officials to clear out of Syrian airspace and was rebuffed. Fox News has learned. The U.S. official said Russian airstrikes targeted fighters in the vicinity of Homs, located roughly 60 miles east of Russian naval facility in Tartus, and were carried out by a couple of Russian bombers. The strikes hit targets in Homs and Hama, but there is no presence of ISIS in those areas, a senior U.S. defense official said. These planes are hitting areas where Free Syrian Army and other anti-Assad groups are located. Now, if that's completely true, that there is no ISIS there, I don't know. It says here, activists and rebel commander on the ground said that the Russian airstrikes have mostly hit moderate rebel positions and civilians. In a video released by the U.S.-backed rebel group Tajmu al-Azhar, jets are seen hitting a building claimed to be a location of a group in the town of Lamana in central Hama province. The group commander, Jamil al-Saleh, told a local Syrian news website that the group's location was hit by Russian jets, but didn't specify the damage. A group of local activists in the town of Talbasi in Homs province recorded at least 16 civilians killed, including 2 children. According to U.S. senior official, Presidents Obama and Putin agreed on a process to deconflict military operations. The Russians on Wednesday bypassed that process, the official said. That's not how responsible nations do business, the official said. Well, we did the same crap. What are you talking about? Look what we do with drones. Give me a second. Okay. Says here, the development came after Pentagon officials in a development first reported by Fox News brushed aside an official request or demarch from Russia to clear airspace over northern Syria, where Moscow said it intended to conduct airstrikes against ISIS on behalf of Assad, according to sources who spoke to Fox News. The request was made in a heated discussion between a Russian 3-star general and U.S. officials at the American embassy in Baghdad, sources said. If you have forces in the area, we request they leave, said the general, who used the word please in the contentious encounter. A senior Pentagon official said the U.S., which also been conducting airstrikes against ISIS, but does not support Assad, said the request was not honored. We still conducted our normal strike operations in Syria today, the official said. We did not and have not changed our operations. We still conducted our normal strike operations in Syria today. Blah, blah, blah. State Department spokesman John Kirby told reporters the Russian airstrikes won't change the strategy of the U.S.-led coalition. The U.S.-led coalition will continue to fly missions over Iraq, Syria, and plan and in support of our international mission to degrade and destroy ISIL, Kirby told reporters, while acknowledging the meeting at the American embassy in Baghdad. Okay, and I have basically the same title article, Russia begins airstrikes against ISIS in Syria, from antiwar.com. And said here, a statement from Syrian state media says President al-Assad formally requested help from Russia in the ongoing civil war, and that the airstrikes began in response to that. U.S. officials slammed the move, saying Assad has to be removed from power. And this is where all of this kind of comes to that World War III part. You have U.S. officials saying, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. Well, they're not really going after ISIS. They're going after Assad. They keep saying, oh, we're arming Free Syrian rebels, which turn out to end up being ISIS. We spent a whole bunch of money to train, maybe 150 to 200 soldiers to surrender and give those weapons and vehicles to ISIS. Oh, that was Al Qaeda. It was the same thing. It's something where that's where World War III, because Russia's there to kick ISIS and any other rebels out of the country for Assad, to back Assad. If U.S. is striking Assad, weakening his positions, that might put them in striking of Russian troops. World War III. Russia saying, listen, we're coming in hard. You've been here for way too damn long. You're not getting the job done. If anything, you're making the problem worse. So, you know what? We're going to come in here. We're going to clean up your mess, get the hell out of the way. And we have no proof that we're being effective in the area because we're not going after ISIS. We're not going after the actual problem. You know, Obama is purposely, being dishonest about the whole situation, going, yeah, well, we do get Assad out of there, but we also need to stop ISIS. Well, you can't do both. You can't jump in the middle of the two and expect to be able to fight both of them at the same time and fund rebels. Well, guess what? Anything that you put on the ground there is either going to go to ISIS or Assad. And even though these people should be probably removed from power, I don't believe in power in the first place. Power is only what you give someone, allow them to abuse. But we go in, create a vacuum, and these places become destabilized. Syria is not being destabilized because Russia is going to come in there. They are destabilized, and we have been there. Libya was destabilized after we went in there. Iraq, Afghanistan, all destabilized. Our operations in Pakistan, destabilizing it. Yemen, destabilizing. We shame ISIS beheading videos, why we dine and chat with Saudi Arabia that beheads more people. Knowing that they're buying oil from ISIS. And again, this is a part of this, world shifting power type structure where Saudi Arabia wants to, reestablish a empire, the Ottoman Empire. We have major issues going on here, and a lot of it's not being talked about. And then, we also have our economy on top of this that's just kind of going to shit. Kind of easiest way to put it. I want to get into one thing here. Ron Paul Liberty Report. And, one thing I've said is, it's one thing to, let immigrants come into a country. It's another thing to create a crisis in the Middle East and flush, hundreds and hundreds and millions of people come rushing across the border from your own actions. But I have one here again. Ron Paul Liberty Report. He has guest Nigel Farage on from the EU. And we'll go ahead and get into this real quick.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Today with me is the co-host, Daniel McAdams, who is also the executive director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, nice to have you with us today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
We have a very special guest, Skyping in from Brussels, and somebody I've met and known and is a friend of Liberty. And we're going to be talking about a very important issue dealing with the migrants in Europe. That individual is the leader of the UK Independent Party, as well as a member of the European Parliament. Nigel Farage. Nigel, welcome to the program today.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very, very pleased to be here.
Good. Very nice to see you. I want to start off with asking you a very general question before we get into some of your ideas on how you can improve things with this crisis that's engulfing Europe. And that is, how did it come about at this particular time? Where do you see the source of the problems that all of a sudden this is a major problem? Nobody 6 months ago predicted this. Maybe you did, but nobody in the States really paid any attention to it. How do you see this crisis having evolved?
Well, I think if we're brutally honest, we have to say to ourselves that the Iraq War, which was fought to get rid of Saddam Hussein, led to destabilization in the region. I think we have to be honest and say that Libya in 2011, where we went in to get rid of Gaddafi without any thought or long-term plan or strategy at all. So let's be frank, Britain, America have not helped this situation. And that I think is an honest way to look at this. Now, why are people coming in the numbers that they are? Well, they're coming because they know that Europe won't refuse anybody. And so if you say to people, if you come, you'll be taken in, it's no great surprise when they do come. I have to say that there is a long-term moral argument for granting people who are genuine refugees or trying to help people who are genuine refugees. The problem, Ron, with what is happening now is, yes, people are coming from countries that are war-torn. Yes, people are coming from countries that are very much poorer than most of the Northern European countries. But that's not the same thing. If over 80% of people that come are actually economic migrants, then I think we have a massive, massive problem. I think Europe have got this policy wrong. I said 6 months ago that if you send out this message that anybody that comes and puts one foot on European soil can stay, I said it would lead to an exodus of biblical proportions, and that I think is now what we're seeing.
Mr. Farage, Daniel here. Just having this opportunity, I remember your 2011 advice to Viktor Orban about communists in the European Commission. I think will go down as one of the great moments in political history. I watched that over and over because I think it's fantastic. But further on Hungary, Hungary and Orban particularly have been demonized in the European media and in the U.S. media for their handling of the crisis, for essentially following the Dublin regulations, whereas Berlin and Vienna have been praised for ignoring the Dublin regulations. And then all of a sudden the floodgates opened, and all heck broke loose. Do you think that Orban and Hungary have gotten kind of a raw deal in how they've been treated by Brussels especially, but also by the media?
Well, it's an object lesson, isn't it? I mean, Viktor Orban is a strong man. He's running a country where the old communists still have their little niches of power, and Orban is trying to clear all of that out and trying to make Hungary into a modern democracy. He is a proper leader. He's a man that I have some admiration for, I have to say. As you say, he's the one that's actually obeyed all the rules. And what on earth is wrong with building a fence? What on earth is wrong with protecting and defending your own borders? Nothing. But what's happened to Orban is really an object lesson in why democracy has effectively been expunged in this European project. So Viktor Orban, the Romanians, Slovakians, some of those Central and Eastern European countries, when they were asked by Mrs. Merkel and the European Commission to share out for settlement numbers of people who'd come in, they said no. And you would have thought that would have been the end of that. And yet, by using quite a crude device, the European Commission and the European Parliament passed a piece of legislation that then went back to 28 prime ministers and presidents, but then could be passed by using a majority vote as opposed to a country having its own right of veto. And so now they're duty bound to take numbers from Brussels. I don't know. I mean, we've seen disunity in Europe over the euro, where one currency suiting economies as diverse as Germany and Greece has shown just not to work. But I sense that the level of division that exists now within this European project over the migrant crisis is even more serious. Because, it wasn't just the European Commission saying, oh, come all ye faithful. Anyone that wants to come can. It was, of course, the German Chancellor. It was Angela Merkel who said, oh, we'll take 800,000 people. That's no problem. And that led to a stampede. So, I am speaking to you from the European Parliament, but believe me, these institutions here in Brussels are stuck in a very, very real crisis. And unless we change policy, unless we say, look, we'll take genuine refugees, but we won't take them if they come across the Mediterranean by boat. We won't take them if they play into the hands of the criminal traffickers. And I mean, on a human level, let's just remember that 3,000 people have drowned this year in the Mediterranean. But there is a modern-day precedent for all of this, because Australia had exactly the same situation. It started back in 2008 with boatloads of people coming from Southeast Asia, and the Australians said, if you come by this method, you will not be accepted. The boats stop coming, the people stop coming, and the drowning stop happening.
That more or less makes the point. If you subsidize something, you get more of it. So if you subsidize migrants, you're going to get more. But, you mentioned that economic policy has something to do with it. There are economic migrants coming in for economic reasons as well as it being related to the wars that have been going on. But I wanted to get your opinion more specifically about the longer-term consequence of what's going to happen to the European Union as well as to the euro. Europe has not recovered. We really in the United States have not recovered from the crisis of 08. And so I see the world economies as very shaky. And can you give me an idea on how serious you think this is, even if you can't solve the migrant policy, or especially if you can? What's this going to do to the economy and to Europe? Because, it is a world economy, and this is something that none of us could ignore.
Well, I mean, there is one argument that says that if you have huge amounts of unskilled labor coming into European countries and that people want to work, that there is a benefit for big businesses because they keep, wage price inflation down, and that's one potential economic benefit of mass migration. But against that, what you have to understand is that there are workers in Britain and in France and in Germany who are displaced by huge amounts of foreign labor, and that average salaries are kept pinned down to the floor because of that excess labor in the market. And you could argue there's an economic benefit, but I would argue even if there is an economic benefit, not everything is just about money. There is something called community. There is something called country. There is something called looking after your own people. Now, on the big macroeconomics, I'm very struck that if we look at all the factors that led to the crash of '08, basically indebtedness and a credit squeeze, levels of national debt, levels of commercial debt, and levels of personal debt are now higher than they were when this crisis broke back in 2008. And I have to be honest, I am pretty bearish. I am pretty pessimistic. I think the flatlining of commodity prices is giving us a very, very good hint, a very good indication that there are some tough economic times to come. Now, what that means for the Eurozone is that disparity, and it's not just a disparity of wealth, it's a disparity of culture between Greece and Germany. So we've now had 3 bailouts of the Greeks, and if we get this economic downturn, there'll be a 4th. So the euro is not working, but there may be an event, there may be a huge event that perhaps could change all of this, and that is that we in the United Kingdom will have a referendum on whether we stay members of this political project or not. And if Britain, in this referendum, which is likely to take place sometime next year, latest by the end of 17, if Britain was to vote to leave the European Union, well, you could see the whole structure here start to crumble.
What is your estimate on what the European Union will be like in 10 years from now? Is there a chance or a possibility that the European Union will break up, or do you think it's there to stay for a long time?
Well, there's been a huge amount invested in making this European Union work. Almost the entire political elite in Europe have backed this supranational project, have been happy to get rid of their own nation-state democracies and hand power. And here's the remarkable thing, to hand power, real power, to people you can't vote for and people you can't remove. They're called commissioners. So they've invested a lot in this. However, I think the seeds of dissent are now very strong. You know, you take my party in Britain as being one example of that, but they're everywhere now. They're right across the north, south, east and west of this continent of Europe. I find it impossible to believe that we can go on through 10 more years of policy failure, 10 more years, frankly, where growth prospects are simply dismal. No, this thing is going to break apart. I don't know when it's going to break apart, but I'm going to do my damnedest for us to win that British referendum to begin the process of this breaking apart. And I say that not because I'm destructive. I say that because I believe there is such a thing as nations and people and wanting to have their own democracies, wanting to be the masters of their own destiny. And I want a Europe where nation states trade together, cooperate together, are friends and neighbors with each other, but not a Europe where nation states hand power to this supranational project. And I feel more optimistic than at any point in the 20 years I've been campaigning on this. I feel more optimistic that we are really, really close to breaking this.
You know, most people in the United States don't have a good feel for the European Union and the euro and how that government works. And some wonder about, where do they get the money? Does the European Union and the European Parliament have taxing authority? Is this a problem, or is each individual country have to prorate and send money to the European Union? How does that work?
Yeah, it works through basically a membership fee. Member states pay a membership fee, and then some money comes back, generally in terms of agricultural protection or whatever it may be. Britain is a big neck contributor to it. So membership fees are one of the ways they raise money. And the other way they raise money is through something called a common external tariff. And that means the more business a country does with non-EU countries, the more money it has to pay in through this common external tariff. What they don't yet have here are direct tax-raising powers, although it's something they'd very much like to have. I mean, don't forget, they've got a flag, they've got an anthem, they're talking about their own army. They are building a state, and yet nobody in Europe has ever given their consent to it. So the budgets here, the budgets they have here are not massive compared to the budgets that nations have, but the power that these people have here is huge. And just to give you a sort of illustration of that, I mean, something like 75% of all laws that are made in Britain each year are not made in Westminster, are not made in the British Parliament. They come through these institutions.
Nigel, time is short, so we're going to have to leave here within a minute or two. But I want to thank you very much for joining us today and talking about this very important issue. And hopefully we can follow up someday on this. And we all wish you well on your referendum, because that would be very interesting, because the referendum is the way to go. And we were very observant of the referendum just recently in Catalonia. But anyway, thank you very much for being with us today.
So thank you very much. And watch this space. Things are changing in Europe. They're changing fast. And I genuinely believe it is now 50-50 in this referendum whether Britain leaves the European Union or stays. And if we leave, that pro-democracy, that pro-nation-state message will be a huge one. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I want to thank the audience today for tuning in to the Liberty Report. And please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe. Now, we kind of see the same thing going on in this turmoil that goes on in Mexico. That one, our drug war, plays a big part in that. Two, we're kind of allowing the flow of migrants, unlike a lot of the European countries where they finally closed their borders. We don't. You'll get pulled over as an American citizen at a border checkpoint, but they don't deport people anyway, so why does it matter? Basically, hey, we'll give you free this, free that. The reason why they want to catch him is so they can get him registered. Okay. Now, our economy isn't doing too well, definitely right now. Let me bring up Drudge Report here. Hold on, give me a second. This one I seen on Drudge Report. September 30th, historically worst day of year for stock market investors developing. This was from MarketWatch.com. It was a headline on Drudge Report. September has been tough for stock investors, but if history is any guide, the last day of September may deliver one more blow to already battered markets, according to a financial blog. Bespoke. Looking at data as far as 1945, the S&P 500 has posted positive returns just 80 or 38% of the last day of September, making it one of the worst trading days of the year, according to Bespoke, as the included table illustrates. Earlier this month, financial blogger Ryan Detrick pointed out that the 38th, 39th, and the 40th weeks of the calendar, which fall in September, tend to be the weakest of the year, dating back to 1950. September has marked a particularly rough stretch for the S&P 500, SPX, plus 1.91%, with only 1 week of September 11th closing higher, as China's slowdown, global economic uncertainties, and lack of clarity on the timing of the Federal Reserve's expected interest rate hike have shaken investors' confidence. According to FactSet, weekly performance in 2015 for the S&P 500 was among the worst in September. For the week, the benchmark stock market index is off 2.3% so far, putting it on track for the second worst week of the year after August 21st, when the benchmark tumbled 5.8%. If Wednesday's trading action follows the historic trend, things could get worse for investors before they get better. And that was from Market Watch, headlined on Drudge. Rich are richer than ever. Bezos makes $16 billion in 1 year. And that one's from Daily Mail. Forbes 400 richest Americans list shows Jeff Bezos, whatever he is, made $16 billion in a year. America's top 400 billionaires are now richer than ever, boasting a record-smashing combined wealth of $2.34 trillion, up $50 billion from a year ago, according to the latest issue of Forbes magazine. Microsoft founder Bill Gates continued to dominate the prestigious list for the 22nd year in a row with a $76 billion fortune, retaining his number one spot despite losing $5 billion from 2014. But it was Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos who has emerged as the biggest overall gainer, adding a whopping $16.5 billion to his war chest in a single year after his company posted a quarterly profit in July. Old money, newer money. Microsoft founder Bill Gates continued to dominate the prestigious list. Here's the list. Bill Gates at $76 billion, Warren Buffett $62, Larry Ellison $47.5 billion, Jeff Bezos $47, Charles Koch $41, David Koch $41, Mark Zuckerberg $40.3 billion, Michael Bloomberg, 38.6. Jim Walton, 33.7. Larry Page, 33.3. Sergey Brin, 32.6. Allison Walton, 32 billion. S. Robinson Walton, 31.7. Christy Walton, 30.2. I think, okay, here it is. I'm not. George Soros came in 16 with 24.5. But we see who's holding quite a bit of power. While if you're out there in the regular world, you're not seeing a lot of that wealth being spread around at all. Even though that's what Obama said he wants to do by taking your money, spread it around, but he doesn't. Keeps it for his buddies. Sorry, I had to blow my nose real quick. We know what a lot of laws that are passed to help, the less fortunate, actually prevent the less fortunate from acquiring for themselves. What it does is it pits them independency of government. And it seems to get shown over and over that that's what these laws do. But when they come out and go, we got a law that'll give you, an opportunity or more benefits or blah, 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 people say, yeah, let's try that. What it does is it further enslaves you to their will. And it's kind of sad that we don't see people calling it out enough. Okay, let me go ahead and maybe. Let me figure out what's going on here real quick. Okay. I want to get back in the economy, but I did see this article. I want to kind of cover it before I lose it, like I just lost a whole bunch of my other articles. Lou Rockwell calls for a grassroots campaign to draft Ron Paul for House Speaker. Ludwig von Mises Institute founder Lou Rockwell published a blog post on Saturday calling for a grassroots campaign to pressure the U.S. House of Representatives to elect former Congressman and Libertarian icon Ron Paul to the position of House Speaker. According to Rockwell, Ron Paul Peace and Prosperity Institute Executive Director Daniel McAdams, who also served as Dr. Paul's Foreign Affairs advisor during his time in Congress, says the U.S. House of Representatives is not required to elect one of its current members to serve as Speaker. Consequently, Dr. Paul, who retired from Congress in January 2013, could in theory be eligible to be elected to lead the House. A Facebook page dedicated to promoting the election of Ron Paul, which I'll try to get you that here in a second, was created in 2010, saw new activity this week in response to the buzz around Rockwell's call. Let me see what it's facebook.com/Ron Paul regardless. So go there and that'll take you to Ron Paul for Speaker of the House. Current House Speaker John Boehner announced last Friday that he will step down from his position next month, which will leave a vacancy. In comments on last Friday's Ron Paul Livery Report, which was published prior to Rockwell's blog post, Dr. Paul discussed Boehner's pending resignation and commented on some of the representatives that are rumored to be in contention to replace him. And it says, quote, my thoughts are that it will be more of the same. They will talk about the various possible individuals that might replace Boehner, but none of them seem to be, real conservative or constitutionalist, but it's almost beside the point because the momentum is so great for more spending, said Dr. Paul. commenting on what he perceives as the Republican-led House of Representatives' lack of conservatism. Dr. Paul said there, but building momentum, and there's a political advantage to some individuals that if they can't close down the government, they'll get some political points. And yet, do you think we are ever going to see the day when conservatives, limited government constitutionalists will stand up and say, we're not going to vote for this budget unless you cut all your funding for these illegal, unconstitutional, insane wars that we're involved in? What are the odds of them even hinting to that? Matter of fact, it's almost the opposite, because they want to get rid of sequestration. Behind the scenes, Boehner and Pelosi are getting together to get rid of sequestration, so funding will go up both on welfare and warfare. Would you like to see Ron Paul as Speaker? Click here to vote in our poll. So if you go to truthandmedia.com, find that article, you'll find the poll too. And you look at something like that, and if you understand it fully, you understand what that means for the economy. But if you don't understand that and you're kind of dependent on government, you're going to see it as, hey, they're taking my stuff. Well, it's not your stuff. It's stuff that they convinced you that you should get for not doing anything. There are people that are literally lazy. You know, you hear people go, don't talk about the fat people, can't call fat people lazy. Well, I'm not calling every fat person lazy. There's plenty of bigger people that, you know, they are not lazy at all. They might have some type of health problem that, you know, diabetes, who knows. But I also know that and have met a lot of the fat, lazy people. I've had parents of people I knew in high school. And I mean, you know, these people were huge. Their parents were huge. And, you know, early on in school, you know, before high school, some of these people I knew, you know, their parents were big. They didn't ever want to get up off the couch. They always made all the kids, you know, get them a pop, get them this, get them a cigarette, you know, go get them a donut, cup of coffee, get my remote. And by the time of high school, you know, these people are, you know, maybe in their mid 30s to mid 40s. You know, there were a few of them. They had disability, handicap plates, could barely walk, and you're paying for that. That's the problem with these type of systems. You want to help the people that, you know, they have a health issue, they gain weight, and they really, you know, it's not that they don't try. And yeah, you could say, well, you know, there's plenty of diets that could go on, and if they worked out, you know, 2 hours every day, and well, usually if they've had health problems and they got to that point, they don't have a lot of energy, which is, you know, bad. But a lot of the time, you know, we forget that it's not them being lazy. These people don't eat even like maybe I do. Or others I know, that there's people I know that are skinny that can sit there and go to a buffet every other day and chow down. And they don't get fat. And there's other people that don't eat a lot, but they still, keep everything they eat, basically. And it's not really their fault. Can't help those people out and not expect others just to go, well, if I get fat and have health problems, I'll just get paid for it. As long as I can be lazy, I can get paid for it. It lets the opportunists get your money, basically. The government can still, when you see that it gets abused, you can't tell the government, oh, I'm not paying taxes anymore because you're giving it to these type of people. You're not watching it close enough. Then when they do, they want to be up your butt. Let's give you a pill that tracks everything you eat. No. How about this? I keep my money, and when I do know and meet someone that is in need, I can choose to go, hey, let me help you out. Well, people won't do that. I do that even though I get taxed. But let me keep some more money. I can do it a lot better, a lot easier. Okay, I'm getting some of my things I lost when my browser crashed here. Give me a second, and I'll get all this back. Um, we we also know, this Pope. This Pope is pretty a hypocritical type of guy, and a lot of that was found out. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I'm not finding the one article I had, but there, I believe it was Archbishop from a diocese that ran away to Tennessee or Kentucky. I think it was Tennessee, and it was as that archdiocese was being basically indicted, and prevent from being indicted, he went to Tennessee. Was also a VIP of the Pope, and I'm like, this is kind of typical of the stuff that's coming out of his mouth. Say one thing, but kind of do another. Climate change. Why? I drive around in a Fiat. See, but then gets on his private jumbo jet, and I've seen the numbers on what it burned fuel for his trip and how much emissions that put out. But we have seen a lot of crazy stuff coming out of this Pope, and he seems to be pretty buddy with a lot of these communist, socialist, fascist countries. And someone I haven't played on here a while. I don't agree with this Stefan Molyneux, a lot of what he says, but there's other things that I do agree on him with. And I think he has a pretty good understanding of Marxism and libertarianism, socialism, fascism. And he did one here, Pope Francis versus Karl Marx, who said it. And this really kind of like, I'm watching it and I'm just going, wow, this is something that we see a lot with any of these, a lot of the left-leaning politics, even some of the right-leaning politics, politicians in our government, other governments, and it's looking more and more like a fight for the New World Order and the beginning of World War III, which everybody says does not end well for anyone. But let's go ahead and get into this real quick.
Hi, everybody. Stefan Molyneux from Freedom Main Radio. Hope you're doing well. Yes, it's that time. It's time to play Pope or Marx. May have noticed Pope Francis leaning a little bit, trending a little bit towards the left, a little bit towards socialism, in the same way that my hair trends a little bit south on the body to form itself into near perfect pubic hair configurations around my mouth. Marx, of course, originally Jewish. Jesus, of course, originally Jewish. The Pope may have got confused and is worshipping the wrong Jew. I would go with beard length, but everybody has their own standards. Let's start right away. You can score this yourself at home, and you can try and figure out whether this is Marx or Pope. Here's the first quote. Are you ready? 1. For each new class which puts itself in the place of one ruling before it is compelled, merely in order to carry through its aim, to represent its interests as the common interests of all the members of society. That is, expressed in ideal form. It has to give its ideas the form of universality and represent them as the only rational, universally valid ones. Pope or Marx? Pope or Marx? Yes, that's right. That was Karl Marx. Now, number 2, a little trickier. Number 2, when at the core of the system we don't have men, but money. When money becomes an idol, men and women become nothing more than instruments of a social system dominated by profound unbalances. Answer. Yes, that was Pope Francis. In other words, a guy wearing an outfit that looks pretty much like a giant gold tea cozy, sitting on a gold throne in a country with the tightest immigration restrictions in the known universe, is complaining about money and inequality. Oh, wait, I actually have another one. Okay, guy who claims to be the only human being alive to have a direct pipeline to omniscience is complaining about inequality. All right, good to know. Here's number 3. Are you ready? Working for a just distribution of the fruits of the earth and human labor is not mere philanthropy, it is a moral obligation. Moral obligation. Answer. Pope Francis. Now, you might, as I have in the past, been quite a fan of religion in terms of its focus on free will and choice and willpower as a whole. You see, on the Marxist side, we have economic determinism. If you're born poor, you get to stay poor. And if you're born rich, well, you get to stay rich, which is nonsense. The classes churn pretty regularly, particularly in a free market society. So the Pope Francis might be talking about what Jesus said, which was everyone who would follow me, take all your belongings and sell them and give all your money to the poor and follow me bareback, pretty much. No, he's not talking about that. He's talking about being a fan of the coercive, government-based, redistributionist welfare state. And that is not exactly the same as a free will. That is not giving people the chance to say yes or no, merely forcing them to give money to others. This is pretty much Buffalo Bill making a skin suit out of taxpayers. This is like Buffalo Bill saying to you from Silence of the Lambs when you're cowering in a deep pit that you have a moral obligation to provide him with woman's skin. It rubs the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again. Yes, it gets the hose, my pretty. Actually, getting the hose, a fairly common Catholic priest phrase. Let's move on, shall we? We are now talking number 4, Pope or Marx. Are you ready? Quote, while the earnings of a minority are growing exponentially, so too is the gap separating the majority from the prosperity enjoyed by those happy few. Marx or Pope? Yes, in fact, that is Pope Francis complaining about inequalities in wealth distribution. The CIA estimates the Vatican City's 2011 revenue to be $308 million. And $308 million, rounding error in Department of Defense, but a fair chunk of change. Oh, except, of course, that the Vatican City only has a population of 800 people, so its nominal GDP per capita is over $365,000. So it's one of the richest states on the planet by this measure. So I think income inequality might be a little bit focused on the Vatican. But it's great that Mr. Goldlame Liberace suit is lecturing absolutely everyone else in the known universe about evening things out. I have a direct pipeline to God, but inequality is a really bad thing. All right, so number 5, Pope or Marx. Are you ready? Quote, some people continue to defend trickle-down theories, which assume that economic growth encouraged by a free market will inevitably succeed in bringing about greater justice and inclusiveness in the world. This opinion, which has never been confirmed by the facts, expresses a crude and naive trust in the goodness of those wielding economic power and in the sacralized workings of the prevailing economic system. Marx or Pope? Yes, that is Pope EF, Pope Francis, talking again about his deep knowledge of economics and the free market. You know, it's great. If I could just say, it's never been proven anywhere, anytime, and it's a complete fantasy, I guess I could win every debate as well. It's good that he's not bringing a huge amount of facts to bear on the issue. Otherwise, the entire superstructure of Christendom might fall in on itself, should the same standards be applied. Now, recently, the Pope addressed Congress. Two superstitious meetings of the unminds. And he's really talking about inclusiveness. You need to include people. Well, bit of a challenge, you know, and under Catholicism, unless you follow Catholicism and give the priest money and obey what the priest does, you go to hell. If you don't happen to be born in a land where the good word of Jesus has made its way, if you happen to be born in the past before Jesus, well, you don't really get to go to heaven. Not the most inclusive philosophy that I've ever heard of. But let's move on to number 6. Pope or Marx? Quote, yet we desire even more than this. Our dream soars higher. We are not simply talking about ensuring nourishment or a dignified sustenance for all people, but also their general temporal welfare and prosperity. This means education, access to health care, and above all, employment, for it is through free, creative, participatory, and mutually supportive labor that human beings express and enhance the dignity of their lives. A just wage enables them to have adequate access to all the other goods which are destined for our common use. Marx or Pope? Yes, that is Pope Francis. Okay, let's just get a principle across here that everybody needs to understand. Pope F, I'm talking to you. Are you ready? Okay. You are not a moral person because you have a whiny wish list of everything you want for the human race. I want world peace. I want every hungry child to have a pony to eat. I want all the wonderful things. I would really like it if rain clouds poured out lemonade so that we could get something to drink if we're thirsty. And I'd really like it if there were no earthquakes. You know what else would be great? It'd be great if volcanoes pushed out Skittles. Well, not too many Skittles because, you know, it's really bad to get cavities. I wish there were no such thing as cavities. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I'm a moral human being because I have a whiny wish list. I have no way of actually finding a way to achieve it. I'm just going to put out a moral wish list and then hope that everyone thinks that I'm a good person because I want nice things to happen in the world. Oh. Let's move on to number 7. Quote, everyone who knows anything of history also knows that great social revolutions are impossible without the feminine ferment. Social progress may be measured precisely by the social position of the fair sex. So this is the argument that you need to rile up women and call their situations and stations unjust and oppressed and patriarchy-bound in order to get social revolution. Okay, Pope or Francis? Actually, KM. That's Karl Marx talking about the need to respect the rights of women just before he basically raped his maid, left her pregnant, and kicked her out into the snow, and followed all of that lovely behavior up by refusing even to acknowledge his bastard child. Because, you know, exploitation of the workers, totally evil. Number 8. A woman enjoys intercourse with her man as she fantasizes being raped by 3 men simultaneously. Answer, yes, out of left field, that's Bernie Sanders. Now, to be fair, by woman, he means taxpayer, and by 3 men raping her, he means 3 burly, ponstachioed men named legislative, executive, and judicial. Boom! That's how we do it here at Free Domain Radio. Let's move on to the next number. Number 9. Are you ready? Pope or Marx? Quote, today, everything comes under the laws of competition and the survival of the fittest, where the powerful feed upon the powerless. As a consequence, masses of people find themselves excluded and marginalized, without work, without possibilities, without any means of escape. Does that sound like economic determinism to you? Well, you see, you've got no chance to get out of the system that you're born into. It's really hopeless. You know, the forces outside your control and your power are going to block you at every turn. You can only fantasize and imagine that the world can get better, but basically, you are a little dandelion fluff in the wind, floating back and forth, floating here and there, and there's nothing that you can do, because corporatism. Okay, does that sound like the Catholic imperative of free will and moral choice? No! The answer is that Pope Francis is talking about this. Now, it seems a bit odd to me that Pope Francis would want to get rid of the poor, given that that's the basic crop of Christendom, and in particular Catholicism. I quote to you from the good book itself, quote, again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. So you're supposed to be poor to get into heaven, but if we eliminate poverty, somehow we're doing a really good thing. The meek shall inherit the earth. No, let's just give them lots of money so they're neither meek nor poor, and thus make sure that heaven doesn't get overpopulated. Let's move on to number 10. Pope or Marx, quote, a political society endures when it seeks, as a vocation, to satisfy common needs by stimulating the growth of all its members, especially those in situations of greater vulnerability or risk. Marx or Pope? That's right. That was Pope Francis once more talking about the need for collective, coercive, socialist action to save people from X. Let's throw a few more quotes in just to see where they land. We can no longer trust in the unseen forces and the invisible hand of the market. Unseen forces? You're the Pope! That's your whole business model! That's the whole thing that you say. Unseen forces, prayer, faith, heaven, hell, all of the imaginary angel-beating wings that distract and disorient the civilization as a whole. Unseen forces, no longer trust in the unseen forces. I think that's all you're bringing to the table, dude. Unseen forces, magic and bullying with the imaginary illness called original sin that only you have the cure for. If you no longer trust in unseen forces, why are you talking? You're not the Pope. You're a guy in a weird hat. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being that determines their consciousness. You see, that's economic determinism. You're entirely shaped. Like water poured into a vessel, you're entirely shaped by your social and economic circumstances. Does that sound like the Pope? You got no chance of getting out. You're poor, sucks to be you. Stay there. You're like a fossil in a sedimentary layer. You've got no will to get up. That was not the Pope. That was, in fact, Karl Marx. And this is where the Pope is. No free will, no choice, no rejection of the need for stuff, but fundamentally economic determinism. Quote, human beings in nature must not be at the service of money. Let us say no to an economy of exclusion and inequality where money rules rather than service. That economy kills. That is Pope Francis. See, Pope Francis has a problem with the free market. Now, in the free market, if I tell you that you have an imaginary disease, and then I say, give me 10% of your money for the rest of your life for me to magically provide a brain cure for your imaginary disease, that's called fraud. Particularly if I say it to children and say that they're born with an imaginary disease, just give me 10% of their money and come to my house and sing for me, and I'll cure you of this imaginary. That's called fraud. So what is the Pope selling? The Pope is selling heaven. Any proof of heaven? No. What is the Pope threatening with you? Hell. He's threatening you with hell. Obey me. Pay me the money. Don't question me, because remember, I have a pipeline to the divine. Or you will burn in hell forever. It is a death threat. It is a torture threat that he is selling. He's attempting to bribe you with something that doesn't exist, and he's attempting to threaten you with something that doesn't exist. So what is the Pope selling? The Pope is selling a vehicle of salvation to a place that doesn't exist. And he is issuing eternal torture and death threats to you should you fail to obey. Now, like most people, I have not read my Apple iTunes agreement in great detail, but I'm pretty sure there are no death threats or torture threats in there should I fail to comply with any of its irrational demands. I don't think so. So, you see, the Pope is concerned that people are serving money. People are serving money and not being good. What is the Pope selling? Why do people give the church money? Well, they're attempting to bribe their way into getting imaginary cures for imaginary illnesses. That's called fraud. And so if the Pope is so hostile towards money, stop taking money. It's very simple. Stop selling things that you don't own and can't prove. Stop telling children they're born with imaginary illnesses and then offering to cure them with your magic spells for the rest of their life should they cough up 10% of their income to you every month. That is vicious and wicked. Now, he doesn't understand economics, of course, because he's a highly ornate con man. But economy is just another word for reality. Human desires are infinite. Resources are finite, and we have to have some way of matching infinite human resources to finite goods and services in the known universe. And the way that we do that is through voluntary trade and through price. That's how the economy works. Look, if you had a cell phone data plan that was really fast and unlimited, how much would you use? How much would you use? You know that you would need, first thing you do, hook up your computer and look for ultra high definition porn. Wait, is there ultra high definition porn on the internet? Let me click on it. Oh, that's not good. I don't want all the holes to be pores. My eyes in high def. All human sex just looks like alien porn.
Okay, that's the end right there. And that was Stefan Molyneux, Pope Francis versus Karl Marx. Who said it? And it's amazing what he's been pushing. It really is. Because he's pushing everything that the social controllers want. Well, look at the history of the Catholic Church. They used to have control over countries. Vatican City is a city within a state that essentially is its own state. You know, one thing that was brought up was, hold on, what happened to separation between church and state when it comes to the Pope coming? Look at how much tax dollars were spent on the Pope's visit. Why? Do you know that the Catholic Church is the world's largest landowner? The Catholic Church is the world's largest landowner, and your tax dollars paid for his visit. Really, if you really want to know the history and what I see the Catholic Church and most religious institutions as kind of fraudulent is how much they put into revenue collection. How much is put into raising money? Why do the pastors, the reverends, all these groups drive around in these fancy cars? Why do they, it completely boggles the mind that, people that claim to be these religious people that, profit off of it. It's one thing to, make a living, but they make beyond a reasonable living for being these, holy leaders. And the Catholic Church is no different. If anything, being the world's largest landowner, it's the worst offender. And you best bet that this whole climate change, I'm pretty sure that the Vatican, I've heard talk about the Vatican has been or will profit off of carbon taxes. How true that is, I don't know. You can probably look it up. I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. But carbon taxes really pay money to someone, and all of a sudden the climate just changes. If there is global warming, does aerosol spraying play any factor in that? Now, Obama's EPA warns sunlight dangerous to plants. Just out of InfoWars. Says here the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency warned against the danger posed to plant life by sunny days Tuesday in a highly criticized post on Twitter. Think sunny days are good for plants? Not always. Sunlight causes ozone to form, which harms foliage, weakens trees. As the Obama administration prepares to finalize strict new rules regarding ground-level ozone, this week the EPA has taken to social media to point out the scourge of sunlight on foliage and trees. Think sunny day? I already read it, but a link sent out with the tweet likely aimed at explaining the harmful benefit or effects of sunlight on plant life redirects users to a dead page on the EPA website. Twitter users noticing the absurdity in the EPA highlighting the alleged danger of sunlight as the world faces numerous legitimate environmental issues mercilessly mocked the agency in response. I applaud the EPA for having the guts to stand up to Big Sun. EPA, almost as bad as someone that pollutes 3 million gallons of arsenic tinged wastewater into a home to Native Americans and bald eagles. EPA, you guys should issue a regulation that bans this sunlight thing. EPA sunlight tax in 3, 2, 1. So, yeah. I got one more short clip I want to play, and I have to do something real quick, so I kind of want to get into this anyways. Maybe. get to wordplay eventually. John Boehner. Okay, here it is. What you need to know about John Boehner's resignation. Next News Network.
Well, now in the wake of John Boehner's resignation from Congress and as Speaker of the House, the GOP is scrambling to fill the void. News out of Washington, according to the Associated Press, a chaotic scramble is on to fill the top GOP jobs in the House following Speaker John Boehner's surprise resignation. Now, the same conservatives who pushed him out are maneuvering to yank the next leadership team to the right. The frenzied action under the Capitol dome will help determine how Congress contends with upcoming battles on keeping the government running and avoiding a federal default, and whether Republicans can take back the White House next year. Boehner's announcement shocked nearly everyone, opening a rare chance for ambitious lawmakers to climb the congressional ladder and for competing factions to exert new sway as an anti-establishment fever sweeps GOP politics. Oh, it certainly is. Look at the lineup of candidates. The front runner for the Speaker's job, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, made his candidacy official Monday in a letter to fellow GOP lawmakers in which he pledged to fight for conservative principles and listen to all members, something Boehner was accused of failing to do. If elected Speaker, I promise you that we will have the courage to lead the fight for our conservative principles and make our case to the American people. But we will also have the wisdom to listen to our constituents and each other so that we always move forward together. So there you have it. Boehner is out, and McCarthy is lobbying for that position now. The conservative Tea Partiers were saying that Boehner wasn't doing his job. He was holding up bills in Congress. He wasn't taking the administration on. Basically, more or less being Obama's lapdog for the Republicans. And now he's folded.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Now, this is something that we see in government all the time, no matter who gets in charge, whether it be the presidency, House Speaker. When you do see someone, let's say one example, Ron Paul. Ron Paul was laughed at, mocked, and then honored when he finally resigned. What was he honored for? Not even giving lobbyists the time of day. Not being corrupt. Not selling out. Not going along with the system. Who honored him by talking about this? Other congressmen and politicians. This was after they played their little game with the vote during the RNC, where it disqualified Ron Paul delegates. The same RNC where a group of Ron Paul delegates were kept on a bus that circled around the convention center and wouldn't let them off. They basically said, yes, we are corrupt. And you're not going to do anything about it. And I'll say it and say it again. I'm not a big supporter of Rand Paul. But again, if you're looking for the least worst of all of them, he's probably that one. No, I don't take Trump seriously. I seriously think he thinks he's great at everything he does. Well, I filed bankruptcy. I took, um, you know, advantage of the law. Those were laws. I was able to do it. Doesn't take any recognition of all the people that suffered from that. Doesn't take recognition that your taxpayer money has to deal with that. He doesn't care because he gets richer. Is he going to care just because he's president? Or will he see opportunity to benefit off the system to what? Make money. He's selfish, therefore I don't think that you're going to see what you might think you're going to see out of him. I really think he's a fascist type dictator. But hey, prove me wrong. While all that's going on, of course, Rand Paul's getting kind of brushed under the rug. And he's struggling to, get the funding. I believe we have one of his super PACs basically kind of just decide, hey, I'm not going to, raise money for the super PAC for Rand Paul anymore because he's walked kind of away from his libertarian ideology, and he's kind of being more establishment. And then you also have Rand Paul calling out Ted Cruz, saying that he basically his actions make it where no one wants to work with him. And I can see that. But really the only thing that people are working on Rand Paul on, not a lot of stuff. Maybe the one with the drug war is getting a little play from, Democrats on that one. He's able to muster up a little bit for audit the Fed, but that's about it. And I applaud what good work he has done, but again, he's not his father. I don't have as much trust in him as I did his father, which I don't ever, have ultimate trust in any of them. They're not people I've known my whole life. They're not. I can only trust by their history, and I think Ron Paul had a lot better history, and of course, a lot longer. We'll have to really see what goes on with this whole primary elections and see where it goes. I don't know if Rand Paul's going to be able. I really think that Donald Trump was kind of put there to kind of silence any true opposition to the status quo. One of the main ones being Rand Paul. And it looks like Hillary Clinton's having a lot more problems going on here. And not only does it have to do with her emails, has to do with her campaign too. This one out of Daily Mail of the UK. And O'Keefe struck again. And he released a video here out of Daily Mail. It's titled Video Hillary Worker Registers Voters with Bitch Face Pic of Trump. Says here, a Hillary Clinton campaign worker has been caught on film apparently committing a felony by advising Las Vegas Hispanics how to vote while he is helping them register. Hidden camera footage shows Henry Engelstein, identified as campaign fellow, reeling in Spanish-speaking Nevadans on a Las Vegas street with a comical picture of Donald Trump on his smartphone. And it says here, quote, "This is my resting bitch face." The photo caption reads, "Meme style." Engelstein tells passersby, yes, a giant clown in the video, and he says it in Spanish. Shown to DailyMail.com exclusively by a conservative group, Project Veritas Action. He boasts that Latinos' anger against the billionaire Republican frontrunner is ample motivation for them to register as voters. It says here, Trump bait. This is a reconstruction of the meme photo of a frowning Donald Trump. Another one. Felony number 1, Hillary for Nevada worker Henry Eagleson told provincial voters while registering them that he was seeking electoral support for Clinton. Felony 2, Engelstein denigrates Trump in the video in Spanish, calling the Republican frontrunner un payaso muy grande, a giant clown. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right. I don't speak Spanish, so. At the same time, Engelstein hammers home his enthusiasm for the former Secretary of State, telling them Hillary Clinton is very good. We are working for Hillary's campaign here in Las Vegas. I need the support of people in the community. The video also shows Engelstein appearing excited by his success rate and placing a phone call to a colleague in search of reinforcements. Come here, he says in English. There's like hundreds and hundreds of people, and I just flash a picture of Donald Trump on my phone, and they all sign up. I've literally just been flashing this picture, Engelstein tells fellow Clinton campaign worker Philip Kim when he arrives, showing off the meme of Trump. James O'Keefe, the swashbuckling right-winger known for exposing the sale of Obama phones in Cleveland and bringing down the liberal organizing group Acorn with a prostitution sting, told DailyMail.com that his organization is engaged in a full-court Clinton press. Our investigation of Hillary's campaign has just begun, O'Keefe said on Wednesday. At this very moment, there are individuals working as paid staffers for the Clinton campaign that are, in fact, Project Veritas action journalists. This is far from over, Hillary. Nevada lawmakers advocating for or against a candidate during the voter registration process a Class E felony. It says, warning, James O'Keefe, the colorful guerrilla video journalist, cautions Hillary Land that his own staff includes undercover operatives working as paid staffers for the Clinton campaign. Oh, that's so great. Section 10 of Nevada Revised Statute 293, Section 505 prohibits any person assisting a voter with registration from soliciting a vote for or against a particular candidate or speaking with them in any way about whom to vote for. Which, they tend to break that one a lot, if you haven't noticed. Penalties include a jail term of between 1 and 4 years. Ingleton couldn't be reached on Wednesday. Clinton campaign spokesman initially declined to comment without seeing the video footage in advance. Given Project Veritas' history, we would like to see what sort of editing we are responding to before deciding whether to respond and how. Hillary for America's Jesse Ferguson said prior to publication. Which, we always like to try to play the editing game, and it's always proven that anything that they edited out didn't help your situation. It was just, random, just editing out non-needed things that was just conversation. Trump spokeswoman Hope Hicks also declined comment on the video. Gail Anderson, Nevada's Deputy Secretary of State for the southern region that includes Las Vegas, told DailyMail.com that her office wouldn't draw a legal conclusion unless someone were to file a formal complaint. But she confirmed that Clinton campaign staffers who helped Nevadans complete mail-in voter registration forms qualify as a person assisting a voter under the law's definitions, and pointed DailyMail.com to the section of law that prohibits their electioneering during the process. O'Keefe's group released a 5-minute video that includes barely 60 seconds of Inglestein's illegally questionable moments, but said it had spent far longer embedded with the campaign. An attorney with the organization declined to release more footage. We have adopted a policy that we do not release our raw video as it would compromise the identity of our sources and tactics, the lawyer said. It says here, campaign lawyer Christina Kupana is under investigation by Nevada election officials after O'Keefe's group filmed her telling workers to do whatever you can get away with, just do it until you get kicked out. We shot a lot of video that day, as we do every day, as you can imagine. A lot of our time goes into bonding with our subjects and developing trust so that they will speak candidly with us. Some of the investment of time showed up in footage Project Veritas released earlier this month. The group promoted video on September 10th showing both Inglestein and fellow campaign worker Harrison Lee discussing their attempts to sway potential voters during the registration process in front of the Las Vegas Public Library. Yesterday we got kicked out because they were afraid of, the voter registration being no longer a neutral thing, Lee laminated in one exchange. The footage filmed at one Clinton's Nevada field office, Engelstein recounted how a library employee confronted both men. She came out with the Nevada statue books, Engelstein says in that footage, and opens it up and starts reading the statute about how you're allowed to get voter registration. That was like the saddest day, Lee says. Engelstein response came with joking exasperation. Dude, she had the effing book. And it goes on, and we already know our voting system is extremely corrupt. Let's say Ron Paul got the nomination, didn't get screwed out of it. Doubt he would have been able to win the office. I think they would have made sure of that. If he would have tried to do anything, probably would have assassinated him. Let's kind of face it. There's something about a lot of these stars out there that people look down upon. They got money, so they do what they want. And there's a lot of these people that they became rich because, well, they followed what they felt like they wanted to do. Part of libertarian ideology, anarchy, is dreaming and following that dream. Just take a hold of your own life. Don't be afraid. Don't be feeling like maybe you're held down. But I got kids. I got this and that. Dream. Dream for your family. Dream for yourself. Dream for your friends. And chase those dreams. And don't let anything hold you back. Because a lot of these people got to where they are because they just didn't care. And they were going to live free and make a living doing it. And when you lose that fear, more opportunities tend to open up for you. And, that's something that I've gradually been really learning. I hear so many attacks on so many stars for, what they do. And I'm like, they're not hurting anyone and they're living free. Screw it. Live free. If you want to live free, just live free. Don't forget to support UCY. Go to ucy.tv, click the UCY support, and help keep networks like this on the air so we can bring you the truth, the news, and